Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Grow podcast since we're doing this every week now. The whole crew is here today. Yeah, gosh. Every time I say that, I'm like, if someone's missing, I'm going to feel so bad. But today, the whole crew is actually here, and I'm not missing anybody. Um, so, what we're going to talk about today is time. And the number one thing that we've heard from our customers since the beginning, and all of you probably have numerous stories about customers talking about this to date, is I just don't have time. I don't have time to build a quiz. I don't have time to, do marketing. I don't have time for this, that, and the other thing. And the thing that I think is a vicious cycle about that is that when you don't have time to work on your business, then you get stuck doing the same things over and over again, which makes you kind of sad and demotivated. And then you don't have time to work on your business again. So then you're just stuck. Like you're stuck there forever. And it's like this endless loop of like, I can't get out of where I'm at, but I don't have time to think about how to move forward. So I guess I'll stay where I'm at. But then it's a year, and then it's 2 years, and it's 3 years, and you're in the same place. So, anyways, I think we'll take a attempt at chipping away at this time issue today. And the main premise that we have, which comes from the coach that a lot of us meet with, Mark, is what are the things that we do that give us better than expected results from our time? And I would also add, like, what makes us feel like excited, like, oh, I finished this task and now I feel energized to do the next task. And then what things make us feel demotivated because it's like something that we don't want to do, and also the results from our time are less than what we would expect. Like we put in time and then it's like, ugh, like I really didn't get as much out of that time as I would want. So that's kind of the table setting, and I'm going to take a risk and just throw it out there and see what happens. And then if no one wants to jump in right away, I can ask further questions so we can get the conversation started.
We need to get like a talking stick. So we
Oh,
just
that's a
hold
good
it up in the
idea.
video. I'm gonna talk next. Um, I actually, as you were talking, it reminded me of this meme that was on, I don't know, Instagram or Facebook a few years ago, where it started out as you have the same 24 hours in a day as Beyonce, so make the best of it. And then a couple years after that, people were saying, actually, you don't have the same 24 hours in a day as Beyonce because she has a whole crew of people behind her, doing her hair, doing her makeup. They pick up her, dry cleaning, or they do her laundry for her. They make her meals. So she has time to do all these extra things that, presumably make her more money, but it's not the same as somebody who's building a studio in their, I don't know, one bedroom apartment or studio apartment, and they have to produce the entire song themselves. They have to adjust their vocals themselves. They have to do like all this different stuff that Beyonce just doesn't have to do. And I think it really relates well to entrepreneurship, because if you are, I don't know, Facebook and Mark Zuckerberg, he has an entire company full of people to do the work that he needs them to do. Whereas if you're a small business owner online, you are the person handling your booking, you're the person talking to your clients, you're the person doing the actual work to deliver to your clients, and you're also trying to work on your own business in order to get yourself out there and have that same reach. So it is really important to kind of figure out, you know, how do I manage my time in a way that I can effectively do all those things, but not burn myself out?
So I have a perfect follow-up to that because this is something Beyonce would have to do. And Josh, as you were going through that question in the beginning, this like really stuck out to me again. It came from Mark, our business coach, and everybody has to just take a break. Like I know that wasn't the answer
Mm.
that you were expecting, but what we all have to do at certain parts of our job and our careers, just in our life, is stop and take a break. And a lot of times when, because I changed roles at Interact, right? So I started with one-on-one coaching and then went into the community. When I transferred that job or that role, a lot of the people I was already working with one-on-one kept trying to reach out to me one-on-one. So it was eating up a ton of my time where I couldn't focus on community. And then same thing when I moved from community into the affiliate program, people from the community were reaching out to me one-on-one because I wasn't there to answer them in the community. But that was eating up a ton of time and I wasn't able to move on to the affiliate program. But in every single case, when I took a vacation or took a week off, or maybe even just a day, right? It sort of not responding to those people right away, they had to find an alternate solution. And that was sort of my way of getting to focus on, okay, when I came back, I also kind of, especially after a week vacation, right? You forget like what was top priority when you left. And when you come back, you have this new set of priorities of, okay, let me catch up. And these are the things that are most pressing. So I need to work on them. And so I would say, and actually, I'll say this too, and I'm not going to say it as good as Mark does, but he had in one of my first coaching sessions that I did with him, this analogy, if you were an author and you wrote a book, or rather you were writing this book and you had an 8-hour workday, as the time progressed in the day, you wrote fewer words per hour. So I don't know, let's just say you were working 8 hours and by the end of the 8-hour day, you wrote like 500 words. Whereas other author wrote, took I don't know, 2 hours in the morning to write 400 words, then took a 4-hour break in the middle of their day to go fly fishing. Definitely Mark's reference because he goes fly. I don't know anything about fly fishing, right? But he took a 4-hour break to go fishing or doing something that you love, and then came back for another 2 hours and wrote another 400 words. You just wrote 800 words compared to an 8-hour day that you wrote 500 words. And when he told me that analogy, I was like, whoa, I need, like, sometimes we really do just have to slow down. Like, what is it that's so pressing on your time that you don't have time to make a quiz or market it or do something else for your business? A lot of times what you're so busy doing doesn't have to be done.
I think also too, though.
Interesting.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Tavares.
Well, for all those listening out there, I think I have a different take just because of my personality type. And I find it very interesting hearing you guys express what you're saying because I'm very routine oriented and very structured based. And that's sort of like my comfort zone for me to be able to work productively. And I think my everyday looks a little bit different from like Jasmine's and Jackie's, right? I have to be in my office space, compartmentalized from the outside world for me to really like hammer into what I have to do. Number one. Number two, I have to write down like sticky notes, or I have to write down on my calendar, like this is what I'm due from like 10 to 11. And then from 1 to 3, this is what I'm going to do next. And that sort of holds me accountable and also helps my mind shift to, oh, I was just doing this. Let me then now shift to my next task. And then let me just shift to my next task. So it's sort of like for all of those business owners out there, it's just sort of trying to find a structure that works for everybody. Everybody's different. I mean, obviously hearing you guys, everybody has a different structure. And also one thing that I learned that has helped me tremendously just in my career field and previous jobs, it's just being open to feedback. Like you just have to be open to feedback, take it in with a grain of salt. It's not about you. It's about what people want, what customers need. And you have to have intention behind that and just try it, And so that's something that's really helped me not take anything personal. I at least try not to, because I'm still human at the end of the day, and move on from it. So that's sort of like, I found that interesting when I was hearing you, Jackie and Jasmine, talk about it. I was like, oh, but that's my take. I don't know what else you guys think.
I kind of feel like I'm more like Damaris in that sense too. Like you guys are talking about how important it is to take breaks. And I feel like I have a really hard time taking productive breaks. Like, yeah, most of the time I feel like when I'm like, okay, I should probably like take a little break, go for a walk or something, I feel like I'm procrastinating because usually that is what I'm doing instead of making it, for me, I found that even if it's like kind of a grind, I'm like, no, I need to sit down and knock this out. Even if I'm behind my desk for 3 hours and phones off, everything, like that works so much better for me. Yeah. Like it makes it so much harder for me when I walk away from it because I feel like I should finish it or get to a point where I'm comfortable taking a break. But I know like my sister, she like, middle of the day, she's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna run out and get my nails done or like do something. Then she can come back and like dive into work. Like for me, that like messes up like my rhythm. Like finding your own rhythm, I think is so important and seeing like how that works for you. But breaks might not work for everyone. You have
Yeah.
to figure it out.
Or you know what? It's funny. My
So I-
definition of break is like, oh, I'm gonna go grab me a snack from downstairs, cook a little lunch, and then come back up and then come back to work. But you know, something like that's my definition of break when I think of it. When I think of vacations, back to Jackie's point, it's like, okay, I'm getting very close to burnout. I'm gonna need to just like take a step back and just like unplug completely. That's when I start thinking of like, I need like an actual 2, 3, 4 day, whatever it is, vacation to unplug. So it's so funny to hear you guys think of like how everybody works differently.
See,
Sorry,
for
Jackie.
me, it's more of like when you take a break, it's physically doing something else to like kind of rest my mind. Because if I try to sit down in front of a computer and force myself to work on something, my creative juices are just draining and then I can't get anything done at the end of the day. So if I'm like, okay, I don't feel like doing anything, let me fold my laundry, right? Like it's kind of resting my mind, but I'm doing something that I don't have to think about. So I can come back to doing my laundry, but also to add to Jackie's point, because I actually had that same conversation with Mark. The way he explained it to me too is like, we have, as a society, we have this idea of an 8-hour workday, but some days you're going to be 100%, and then the next day you'll be 50, then the day after that you might be 80, and then you might be 70, and it's always fluctuating. So you kind of just have to like go with the ebb and flow of how you're feeling that day. So if you get more done in 2 hours and then you stop to like go do laundry or get your nails done, and then you can come back the next day and maybe it takes you 4 hours to do the same thing, but like as long as you're getting your work done, then you're just, I guess, taking care of yourself more a little bit better. But I could also totally understand the idea of once 5 p.m. hits, I don't want to be anywhere near my computer.
Yeah.
And I totally used to be that way. And part of me still is. So Damaris, what you said, I was trying to, like, when I was trying to be more productive, I would block out time of like, okay, from 11 to 12, you're going to do this task on your to-do list. From noon to 1, you're going to take this task. Then you block out a lunch break. Then from 2 to 4, you do that. But then to Jesse's point, I'd be so into the thing that I was doing and I wasn't quite finished yet. I just had to finish it because it was easier out in the mindset, like sitting there just to bang it out than to walk away and then have to get back into it later. So I see what you're saying. And so what works, and agreed, Damaris, what works for one person you have to find like your own rhythm and like what works best for you. And so for me now, and I tried to, and this is another like direct answer to your question, Josh, productivity apps waste so much of my time because I spend so much time trying to figure out how to use them. And then I don't end up using them or I use them wrong or just takes longer. So like that is a huge time suck for me. So that doesn't work. Scheduling out the hour thing never works because I would get so off schedule because probably I would get distracted. That's probably like just my own personal biggest pitfall, shiny object syndrome. And so what works for me is now, rather than trying to find a specific time of the day on my calendar to get this thing done, is I have my to-do list. And then in that day or in that week, I say, okay, I have the energy for this thing right now and I can cross it off, right? Because I think where I get the most overwhelmed and stuck is when I have all these things in my mind of like, okay, Jackie, you have to do like these 5 things, let's say, right? And I want to get them done by the end of the day. But I promise you, every time I try to just sit there and finish those 5 things, it takes me 2 times at least longer to get them done. Whereas if I just walk away, do something like Jessamine said to clear my mind or just not think about work, and maybe I'll just, so that I don't get out of that mindset, right? I'll write them down of like, okay, you need to do this for the affiliate program, this in the community, this for strategy calls, and this for AI, right? Walk away and come back. I have my list. I know what I need to do. It usually takes me like 15 minutes to finish something that I thought would take hours to do when I've sort of reset myself in that little bit of a break. So yeah, totally. You have to do what works for you. but I totally hear where you're both coming from, because I still am that way. I've just learned now in practicing this that the best thing for me to do is have my to-do list, but not tell myself the specific time that I have to do them. Because you all see me on Slack. Sometimes I'm responding to you at like 2 a.m. because I can't sleep, or I I don't know, slept in, or maybe I traveled, so I'm on a tour that day or something. So I just find the time where I have the most energy for the thing, and that's where I do the job the best, and I also get it done the quickest.
Yeah,
Hmm.
and another thing I want to sort of point out, because I think it's important. I think I'm the only one with kids here in this during this growth podcast, and I know a lot of business owners out there are sort of juggling kids, marriage, partners, other things, right? And so for all of you that do have kids, it's very important for me to have quality time with my daughter. And so I try to find a schedule that works for me that would also allow time with her. And with time with her, I mean by like undivided time, right? Like not worrying about, oh my God, then I have to go back and finish this thing at work, or I have to go back and like finish this whatever it is that we have going on. And so for me, just to sort of give you guys some context, we're currently working on a 4-day schedule, right? But for me, it works better if I work like on a 4.5-day schedule, because I shorten my days out a little bit, but then I work half a day on Friday. And the reason that works out for me is because I have to be off at a certain time to give my daughter, right, a little bit more of time, but then I can make up that time, let's just say Friday, because I won't have her. So I'll be able to make up that time and be more concentrated on my work task, right? And so it's just really about just like time management for your family, or whatever works for whatever situation you have going on. And everybody's different. My daughter goes to school from, I don't know, let's just say 9 to 3, whatever it is. And I try to work around that at the same time, making sure that my job's being done and done effectively. So it's just like everything is sort of balanced out. So I think time management is super, super important.
That actually makes me think of maybe time management isn't the right word. It's more of like priority management. You need to
I like
understand
that.
like what are the priorities? Well, first you have to figure out like what are the main priorities of my business? What are my goals and how do I get there? And then you have to figure out what are my main priorities today versus something that can get done next month, or something that is an ongoing project that I just need maybe an hour a day to do, and I need to make time for that specifically. Because I think at least something I've always struggled with is I always call it time management. I'm always like, I feel like I'm not managing my time properly. And some days I feel so busy, and then other days I feel like I'm literally doing nothing and I'm getting paid to do nothing. Josh, don't even listen to me say that. But no, I'm just kidding. But it really feels that way sometimes, because sometimes you have these priorities, you get it done. And I think that's where kind of what you're saying, Damaris, where like you don't want to have to think about it come later, but it's because you're so good at figuring out, okay, well, I have these specific hours, and of those hours, my priority is to get A, B, C done. So as long as I get those 3 done, or as long as I get A done today, then I can have that quality time with my daughter, which is having a healthy work-life balance.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with that.
And that brings up a really good point. Everybody has really good points, and I have an idea that we'll run with maybe if everybody's on board. But the point that you brought up, Damaris, about we switched to a 4-day work week. And so, I mean, that's probably something that a lot of people are curious about, of like, wait, what? Like you cut out a day and you're still, getting your stuff done and, operating as a healthy business. So I think that's an interesting one to kind of double click into. But what I was hearing, I was kind of just writing down everything that everybody said. So I'm going to read back the highlights and then let me know if I missed anything.
Josh, before you read, I just want to make sure everybody knows when we say 4-day work week, we weren't asked to work 10 4-hour days. We literally cut off a whole entire day of work, because I think a lot of companies, when they say, okay, everybody, we're going to 4-day work week, you're expected to work those extra days Monday through Thursday, or whatever days you're working, right? But that's not the case for us. You can call it a 32-hour work week if you want. We're not expected to make up the time from taking this 5th day off.
Yeah.
Very good point. Very good point. Because I did have a job, internship once where it was like that, and like 4-day work week, but you got to be here 10 hours. I'm like,
yeah.
That's
these
terrible.
summer hours. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's not
summer
what we're doing.
hours means you have to stay here during the whole time that it's light outside.
Yeah.
Good point. Good point. Okay, so here are the broad categories, and I grouped these all together. And I credited who came up with them, so I want to dive into that more. But broad category number one is take a full break, like a vacation. Like this is where it's like, I think what I was hearing is like you're burnt out, it's just like your productivity is gone. You need to take like an actual break. Second one is to prioritize. So figure out like what needs to get done today, this week, this month. Third one is time blocking. So, putting things into buckets of when they need to get done, or how to get them done, something like that. And then the fourth one is flexible work, which I think is a good term for the 4-day work week thing too. Which basically just means, like you're saying, I need to get these things done, and it needs to be within this kind of general time frame, but not going to hold myself to a certain standard. High level, did I miss any big categories?
I
No,
would
I think
say,
I hope-
yeah.
I don't know if this falls under priority, God, I can't speak prioritizing, but I think what came to mind was a healthy work-life balance when Damaris was talking about making sure she had quality time for her daughter. Because I think it's one thing to make sure that you think about your priorities for work, but you got to think of your priorities for life too.
That's a good add-on to prioritize. That one was like a little stuck between prioritize and flexible.
Yeah,
Maybe
Yeah.
it's kind of both.
I agree.
And I could elaborate a little bit on that. Like for me, specifically, and I know there's a lot of people out there that are trying to get their businesses going, and they have all of these other things that they have to do, which can sound like a lot, and it's super overwhelming if you sit there and just sort of like dwell on the idea of like, oh my God, I have to do this, and I have to do dinner, then I have to do that, then I have to do that. It just seems like a lot, but it's just like taking a step back and going back to priority and time management or flexibility. It's, when we switched to these 4-day work weeks, I had to have a conversation with myself, and I was like, is that realistic for me? Am I going to be able to just fully work 4 days and have 3 days off? And I think I have control issues anyway, but that's a whole other topic for those out listening. So I had to sort of think to myself, like, am I okay with shortening my days off a little bit and then working half a day on Friday? Is that an option for me? And it worked out for me. I don't have my daughter that day. My partner is at work. I have time to sort of just really hammer in on the tasks that I didn't get done for the week or whatever that is. And so that schedule worked out for me, and back to Jasmine's points, it's important for me to have that quality time, especially talking through, we have actually a business coach, which is probably something that we should highlight. He has been super helpful trying to determine these sort of important points that matter a lot in our lives. That was one thing that he sort of like, we sort of talked through, like what works for you where you're not going to feel burned out. You're not going to feel overwhelmed. You're not going to feel like, dang it, like you're checking a box, you're coming into work, like what works for you. And so that was sort of a conversation I had to have with myself, right? Luckily, I have amazing bosses, Josh, Annie, Matt, all of you guys that just, are open to that flexibility. So
That's perfect, because that was what I was going to ask us to do. So you already got the first one.
Oh,
I was going to ask us to define each of these categories, and I think that was perfect. Tell me if this is like a summarization of what you're saying. So I think we can connect, prioritize, and flexible work and call it the ability to prioritize what matters in life to enable enjoyable, efficient work.
yeah,
Mhm.
I like that. Yep.
Cool. All right, so we have number one. This is our quiz results of our quiz called How Can You Get Back Time? That will run through our AI after this, and we'll put it in the show notes. So that's number one. And then let's jump into, I like the time blocking one, because I think for a certain percentage of people, depending on your personality type, that's a big thing. So does anybody want to take a crack at defining what time blocking means?
I instantly think of Jasmine or Jackie because I look at your guys' calendars and you block off everything with your times, like 2 hours for this, 3 hours for this. I definitely don't do that, but you guys, I am always in awe when I look at your calendars. So I'm curious.
The biggest hack that I would say for that is to not time block the specific thing that you have
Mhm.
to do,
Mm.
but like overarching tasks. That adjustment, I don't know if I'm saying that right, but what I
No, that's
mean is like,
correct. Yeah.
I know, especially traveling, I know when I'm going to be able to be in a quiet room and have calls. So I will block an entire day sometimes just to have calls. That doesn't mean I'm going to be on calls all day long, but it means nothing else. Well, I guess it means that my priority that day is to get on all of these calls that I need to get on with certain people. Rather than, because this happened, what am I trying to say? With strategy calls, right? I sort of opened up my calendar and 15 minutes would go in here and 15 minutes would go in there. And then a few hours would go in over there. And they were sort of all spread out between each other, which I tried to do for the convenience of the customer, but it was so inconvenient for me. And even though sometimes I would have like hour blocks of time in between those strategy calls, I couldn't get anything done because I had to, wrap up from the first call, start, researching for the next call. Nothing else could happen. So then I was like, okay, I'm only going to take strategy calls on Tuesdays and Wednesdays and Thursdays. I think that's how it started or something like that. So I guess what I'm saying is you want to not block out specific, like smaller amounts of time for specific tasks, unless sometimes you need to. Sorry if that's a confusing answer. But for the most part, block out entire days devoted to a certain thing, or like chunks of hours, a couple hours to get this thing done, because there are going to be things that come up. Maybe you get a Slack message that's really pressing, or I don't know, an email from somebody that you've been waiting to hear from for a really long time and you don't want them to get away, something like that. So you're allowed to do other things in those blocks of time. This is actually not probably the best definition, but I guess final answer, what I'm saying is block out longer pieces of time to do overarching tasks rather than trying to fit in, okay, I'm going to email this person back between this hour and this hour kind of thing.
Yeah, so Google Calendar, for those who use it, now has, this is my favorite feature. You can like mark time as focus time, or I think like I originally used out of office time, but then they implemented focus time. So for me, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, in the mornings from 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. are all blocked off for focus time. So it's strictly just projects, answering emails once the projects are done. And honestly, even getting to drink my coffee in peace rather than being on a call early in the morning where my brain's more creative, but it's not like I'm not ready to socialize, I guess you could say. And then I reserve the afternoons as open time for calls for anybody. And then I also put out of office from 12 to 1 specifically for lunchtime. So no one's allowed to talk to me during lunch because it's a full-on break that I take in the middle of the day. Thursdays, however, are completely open because, kind of alluding to what Jackie said, like, there is part of me that wants to have convenience for customers. So if I'm constantly like, well, I'm only available Eastern time in the afternoon every single day, that's not convenient for people who are in different parts of the world. Whereas if I open at least one day, because my job is a little bit of half and half, it's half project, half calls, then I can give that convenience to someone where like, hey, if you absolutely need to do a call at a different time, like my Thursdays are fully open. I think traditionally, blocking time, the way people have talked about it, was what Jackie was kind of saying don't do, where it would say like from 8 to 10, I'm going to edit this blog post that came through as a draft. And then from 10 to 12, I will, check my emails and respond to these requests that people are sending me. But it doesn't always work that way because sometimes projects take longer, Or sometimes they don't take that long and now you blocked off 2 hours for it where you could be doing something else. And I think the reason for that, why that's not good, at least for us too, I'm speaking for you, Jackie, but correct me if I'm wrong, is that it's really hard to do that switch where you're like, oh, now all of a sudden I have a whole hour and a half. Like, what should I do? And it's hard to do that switch into another project. Whereas, like, if you just block off focus time and you're like, okay, I have these 3 projects that need to get done. I'm just going to make sure I finish the first one and then go into the second one. And the third one is kind of I guess for those tasks, the least priority. So if I get to it tomorrow, then that's going to be number 1 on my list for tomorrow during focus time.
Yeah, I think a big part of this, because something that I wouldn't suggest is you're blocking off time to do these projects, right? But then you're like me and you have shiny object syndrome and you don't actually do the thing. So like the point of time blocking is so that you get this thing done. But I think what I learned I mean, practice it. That's the first thing that you can do. It's just maybe that's what you want. Like Damaris said, she likes to have things in specific schedules, right? Like she has to pick her daughter up at a certain time of the day. So maybe for her, it does make more sense to say, okay, from 10 to 12, I'm going to answer chat. And then only from 12 to 1 am I going to focus on this other project, right? So number 1, yeah, just practice it and see what works for you. Because I think what I want to make sure gets included in this definition of time blocking is that you do prioritize, or rather, you do focus on this one thing to get it done, because that's where you become less productive when other things are distracting you from just getting this one thing done. It will take you so much. That's what I was saying with the strategy calls. Trying to squeeze something in between the calls would never work because I was too distracted by other things that were taking attention away from just doing something that probably usually, honestly, when I would test this out, and I say test it out, it wasn't even like that. When I would just do it, it would take me like 15 minutes, 20 minutes to do something that I thought might take days or hours or even weeks sometimes. Like, well, I'd have to go through this whole list of people to figure out X, Y, and Z. But if you just like block an amount of time where I silenced my Slack. I literally have silenced my Slack. I don't see email pop-up notifications so that I can just focus on this thing, and you'll get the thing done so much faster. That's what time blocking will do for you, depending on the way that you want to do it.
I think that's perfect. So here's my synopsis. See if this sounds right. So set aside future time for key tasks so you know they will get done. By doing that, you buy yourself time to focus on what needs to get done in the immediate, or take a break / rest.
Yes, love it.
Cool. All right, we have 2 results. Now we got to do the 3rd result. And this is a very key thing that happens. Yes, I am.
To us.
I'm not really here. This is a key thing that happens that I want to highlight it for anybody that's trying to build a quiz. So what I'm realizing as you guys are all talking is that prioritization goes into all of the results. So rather than making it its own result, I think it's key to all of these. And then the way that you would get one of these results is based on other factors. But no matter what result you get, prioritization is still key. So we won't make that its own result, but we'll include it in the description of each result. Okay, so what does it mean to take a full break? That's what I'm calling like the vacation one.
I think Jasmine and Jackie would be the best for this one. I'm still working on that.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I would just say whether it's a full vacation, whether it's a day, whether it's a lunch break, whether it's a 15-minute walk around the park, taking a break means you are completely removed from doing that thing. You don't have your computer open. I try to stay off my phone so that I'm not also on another screen, right? I'm not having I'm not doing anything that relates. Let's talk about work. I'm not doing anything that relates to work. I'm completely disconnected from you guys being able to talk to me and from me being able to talk to you.
And also,
regardless of what you're doing in that break or how long it takes. Yeah.
I would add to that, setting the expectations before you leave. I don't know how that can go into the definition, but, I think we all have this understanding of when someone's on vacation, we don't expect a response until they get back. But if you're at a larger company or you work specifically one-on-one with clients, it's good to set the expectation that hey, whether this is setting your auto response or letting them know before you leave, I'm going on vacation for X amount of days. I won't get back to you until X date, which doesn't have to be the day you actually get back. You can set it for 2 days later, 3 days later, allow yourself time to actually catch up, which I include as a part of the break, because something that I experienced, I mean, before I started doing this practice, was I would go on vacation and come back with a lot of anxiety. And it was really like I was dreading coming back to work, which you never want to do. And you want to come back to work and feel actually rested when you take a full break. So I would also include maybe feeling actually rested on your break.
Yeah. And sometimes, like Jesse and Demir, and Jesse, sorry if you were gonna say this, but like sometimes your vacation can include work time if you don't want to feel like a little bit, right? Like if you don't want to feel that anxiety of coming back to work with 1,000 emails, especially if you're the only person in your business, you don't have people to triage, or answer for you. You're the only person there. Sometimes it might make sense for, hey, I just put the kids to bed, so or well, someone else, I don't know. I don't have kids, so I don't know why I'm making this reference. But hey, well, this thing, maybe I'm sitting in an airport. I do this. If I'm sitting in an airport about to get on a plane, right, but I'm on vacation, then sometimes I might pull out my phone and check my emails just to see what's going on. If there's something I can quickly and easily respond to, or in that moment, my time would be better spent replying to it now than waiting. I don't know, if I'm on a week vacation, waiting a week to get back to this person and letting these other balls drop because they need an answer, right? Sometimes that's priority, but like whenever you are taking the break, you're disconnected from work. So if you need to schedule work time into the break, then fine, that works. But
maybe a better definition, instead of like setting expectations, would be setting the boundaries of your break, because like Jackie said, like setting a boundary could be I'm disconnected, but it could also be I'm disconnected, but when I'm here, I will answer you.
I also think a big part of it is kind of like setting yourself up for success with anything. When I am leaving for a big break, you need to leave projects in a way that you're not thinking about them, do what you need to do in order to feel good about stepping away. Don't leave them half finished heading into a weekend. Like, take that extra 30 minutes if that's what it takes to get it done, and you will enjoy your time off so much more and come back feeling so much better to hit the ground running. So just doing all the little things, even if it takes a little bit of extra time to like make sure that you're good to go, will make your break so much better.
Or if you can reassign it to someone else, that also works. Too.
Whatever you have to do. But I feel like putting in that little bit of extra work makes a huge difference.
I like that.
And also ask yourself, like, is something going to start on fire? I'm sorry to make this analogy, but like, will somebody die if I don't fix this thing before I go, right? Like sometimes it's okay to just let a project hang out for a minute, without you doing finishing every little single thing. Because a lot of times, I think I made this, I said this on the podcast last time, I work East Coast time. Well, actually, I don't really work in any specific time zone, but you guys are all in Pacific time. So I'm always online before you guys, usually. And so there have been times where I complete work before you all get online. And then as a company, we decide, hey, we're going to change this thing. And so for me to rush and finish this stuff that was like sort of hanging over my head, right, that wasn't going to start a fire if I didn't touch it, nothing would have happened. And also I just wasted time because now we just changed the direction of what we were doing, right? And I didn't actually need to do those things. So like don't feel like, yes, I totally agree, Jesse, because I just went on vacation. I took a week off a couple weeks ago, and I had to like sit down for a few hours and just bang out some stuff because I knew it would be hanging over my head the entire week, and I would have tried to like slowly keep coming back to it every day. And that's not a vacation, that's not a break. So if you need to do that. But also if something doesn't need to be done right now, don't do it. Like, how many emails do we all send that like someone's like, thank you so much, and all you send back is like, you're welcome, have a good day? You don't need to send that email all the time or ever. Sometimes, like it's okay to not respond to every single email or do every little single thing.
I think part of the preparation also starts much earlier too. Like I'm going to be gone for 4 weeks. So preparation for the sabbatical started when, Jesse, like 2 months ago, we started kind of already talking about like, okay, what projects need to be completed before I leave, or like what ongoing projects can you take on, and if you can't take on, do we need to reassign to somebody else? and just like being prepared for that time so you can leave without having to think about it, I think is
Yeah.
super important, but don't do it the day before you leave.
Well, I kind of have a thing that something I want to add on, because I think I'm a work in progress. I'm in between like Jackie and like Josh, probably. I'm like right there in the middle. And Mark, our business coach, the way our conversation started, now it's sort of a running joke, but like when I first started working with him, our tagline is like Damaris has no chill. So that was sort of like me at the beginning. So now I'm trying to like, I'm like a little more, like I'm like making some headway, but for those that have sort of unplug control issues or whatever you want to define it, what's worked for me is if I really need to unplug, definitely, like, you know, I have Jared, who's who I'm his, I don't know, what do you call it, predecessor or people, whoever had the role before, I don't know how to say it.
Yeah,
Then I would
predecessor.
definitely ask him for support, like, hey, I really need you to help me take care of this. But for like smaller breaks where it's not like super unplugged, I think to help our control issues, for all of us that have control issues, is just having sort of control over that one task that you have. So just to give you guys an example is like, I do a lot of the support chat features for Interact, right? And me having control of that is super, super important to me, because then I get anxiety if I have somebody else take the wheel, if I'm supposed to be taking that project on myself, unless I'm completely unplugging. So it's like just sort of having your own time to respond when you feel comfortable versus then allowing somebody else to take over that completely, and then you just getting anxiety over that. I feel like it's like counterproductive, right? So I don't know if that's a helpful response, but that's sort of like something that I'm working on, and it's sort of kind of helped me, my mental issues, more at ease.
But I say, Damaris, I say kudos, because you're currently practicing this so that you can figure out what works best for you. And I remember when we went on our last offsite, it made more sense for you to actually take maybe an hour or two of the offsite days,
Yeah.
or sometimes on the weekends or when you got back, to monitor the chat and, you know, maybe respond to a few things or answer a few things. But that helped you have a better break, so that when you weren't, you know, answering the questions, you weren't worried about like, oh my gosh, what's happening where I don't have a control over this, or what am I going to come back to, or what did you come back to, you know?
100%.
Different ways that we do this are going to be different for you guys listening, like, right, like whatever works best for you is going to work best for you. But I still think at the end of the day, you taking a break is unplugging from the work. It doesn't mean that you're not coming back to it or that you're not getting the work done. We're all getting the work done. But when you're taking a break, you're actively choosing not to be online, maybe you could call it, since we're probably talking to everybody who works online, but you're not focusing or working or doing anything that relates to your business. You're unplugging.
That is really great. There's a lot of good stuff in there, and I'm trying to synopsize it. I think what I have is to give yourself an extended amount of rest from the mental effort of work, because as you all pointed out, like in this age and with the work that we do, it's really about the mental effort. I think that's like the right wording for it. And then you can do this by setting clear boundaries from your work and by setting yourself up to actually be able to take a break from your work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Nailed it.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, we have our 3 outcomes, and we'll run that through the AI and put that in the notes, because that's actually an interesting quiz. how can you get time back? Because I think depending on where you're at, it's probably like one of these was better for you, right? Like, because there's probably periods of work where it's like it's just not practical to take an extended break, or you don't even want to. Like, I'm, on to something really great and I want to see it through, but I'm also burning myself out. So then I need smart time blocking. Or it's like, no, I've been going really, really, hard on work for like 3 years and I need to take a full break. And that's like a different person. Or like I enjoy my work and I'm I like what I'm doing, but I just need to be able to prioritize more of what matters to my life, and then you would do the flexible work. So I think that's really cool, and that wasn't the intention at the beginning of the podcast, but it made perfect sense as we're talking. I'm like, oh, this is why people do quizzes.
Yeah.
So
But you
I
know
just-
what though? Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, I just love how Josh turned this podcast into like, oh, let's just make a quiz now. Like this is perfect. Like, and we have the
Yeah.
3 outcomes, and like, sure, it worked out.
makes sense.
I was
It
going to
makes
say
sense.
that, like, I think in our sort of field too, in our industry, a lot of saving time or getting time back has to do with spending money or doing something extra. But really, all you have to do is like take a second and figure out how to actually take care of yourself. And that's how you get your time back.
That is a very good point. I think that no one makes money off of that, so no one's going to tell you that. It's just my view of life in general. People only tell you to do things that they can make money off of. But yeah, I think that's honestly a great way to end it. We'll have a very abrupt ending on that note. Of all of this is more mental and simple. Or Jess, if you have a better way of phrasing that, we can end with that.
Nope.
Even-
Not at the
even more
top of my
simple way
head
to
if you
end
put
it.
me on the spot.
You're on the spot. You must do it. Cool. Well, thank you everybody for being very open as always. I think that's like what makes this company tick, and it's also what makes this podcast tick, is just everybody shows up as, you know, their actual selves, and that's commendable. So I appreciate that. And we'll sign off here. I don't have a cool closing, so we'll just end it. But it's good
Bye,
seeing you.
everybody.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone.